for old-fashioned recipes and your gardening needs, while sipping on Kentucky bourbon. You sit right back in your big red hat, we're taking rural back from the urban. Listen to the stories where Kentucky proud, share the giggles with all of your friends. You're all tuned in to Friends Drifting.
Hey, it's Joyce, and welcome to the 9th episode of Friends Drift In. And today we are celebrating Thanksgiving. And one of the great things about Thanksgiving is friends. Friends Drift In on Johns Creek is so excited to have Cathy Raymeyer as our guest today. You may have seen her in some cutaways on KET. She and I shared a little video on KET, Kentucky Life. Everybody said, "Who's the pretty lady?" It was Cathy Raymeyer. She is a pathologist by trade. One of the few other women in Pike County that has a degree in agriculture.
Woohoo!
We're going to be talking about 4-season gardening today.
Yes.
And we're going to be talking about gluten-free and what that means. So Cathy, why don't you tell us a little bit about what gluten-free means?
Well, gluten-free for my family means it's a way to keep my family healthy. My husband and my daughter, at least one of my daughters, has celiac disease. And a lot of people don't know what celiac disease is. They're familiar with other autoimmune diseases like Crohn's disease or multiple sclerosis. But there's more people in this country with celiac disease than all those other autoimmune diseases combined. It's the most underdiagnosed disease in the country. And essentially, people have to avoid gluten if they have that diagnosis.
Gluten comes from wheat.
Comes from wheat, rye, barley, and it can be hidden in a lot of processed foods. And so we do a lot of our own gardening to grow our own food, to keep our family safe and healthy. We do a lot of our own baking as well. And it's just mainly for maintaining our health.
So today we're going to do a gluten-free dressing, which will be a little bit fun. We're going to start out, this is a Walton squash, that's how I say it, Walton. This is what we grow, most people around here know, it's a butternut. But now Cathy is like me, she likes to grow the crazy ones. Cathy, what's this?
So this is an Italian butternut.
Okay.
And this is a butternut rugosa violina Gioia, which means...
She has a doctorate degree, y'all.
No, I'm sure I just slaughtered those pronunciations. But essentially, the Gioia means joy in Italian. And of course, rugosa for its warded appearance. Very
textural, yeah.
And of course, they get very large, as you can see, compared to the more traditional butternut that we're familiar with.
So we diced that ahead of time.
That's right. And so if you could grab me a spatula, all I'm going to do is I'm going to pour some olive oil into my pan, and I'm going to take some of these. I'm going to let you get my other pan. This is about 8 cups of this butternut squash, and I'm just mainly doing this in a single layer here. And then I'm going to take the spatula, and I'm just going to
get it coated.
Get it good and coated with
so it don't brown off too bad.
Olive oil.
Now we've preheated our oven to 425 degrees, and we're using an extra virgin olive oil, which is a cold press. If you look for the cold pressed olive oil, you get a better product, better cooking, better taste, less flavors. To complicate this, because this is going to have a lot of flavors we're going to add in later. So kind of a fun process.
Okay, so once I've got that all mixed in there, I'm going to add a little salt and pepper to that.
We have some sea salt. You tell me when. I've got a heavy hand with salt.
Okay, that's good. And then a little cracked pepper as well.
I always like to use the cracked pepper whenever possible, that you grind it as you go, because that releases the oils and it'll give you a much better flavor.
Now, since we're talking about gluten-free cooking here, I'll mention also, if you're cooking for your family that has celiac disease, it's very important that you use dedicated cookware. A lot of bakeware will have gluten residue on it if it's been used for biscuits or other wheat-containing foods. And so in our family, even though I do not have celiac disease and I can eat gluten, and trust me, I do when I get out and about, we are a dedicated gluten-free kitchen at my home for that reason.
All right, so this goes in the oven.
That's right. And then the other skillet as well.
Yeah. Now when we talk about zucchini on Johns Creek, this is not what we talk about, Kathy. What have we got here?
This is a type of zucchini called a Trombone Squash. It's also an Italian heirloom. It's also known as zucchini rampicante because it will grow rampant through your garden. Nothing touches this.
Zucchini rampicante, like rampant,
like
which means
rampant.
mad.
That's what I think of because nothing kills this thing. No pests bother it. It withstands drought. It withstands heat. Even though I planted these late this year, still I had some for green. And really, when you're using it as a green zucchini, you want them much smaller than this. But then they also get rather large as well, and they are more like a butternut squash. So you can let those cure.
And
you can see,
are you back there?
Yeah, you can see why this is called a tromboncini or a trombone squash. I love it. Okay, so we're going to cut that up as well. And if you'll just go ahead and add some, whoops, we lost one.
It's not the Food Network.
Yeah.
So we need a little olive oil in here.
Yep. And you know, Joyce, you've had all these big city chefs on your show. And I'm sorry, but you know, we might be here for a while with me cutting this
We
thing
call
up.
this real life, and we're just friends hanging out in the kitchen.
Right.
This squash, a lot of the Italian squash, I like to point out, I've grown several different Italian zucchinis, but they're a lot firmer than what we grow around here. It's very, almost apple firm. Almost apple firm, and they cook so much better than some of the softer summer squashes.
Okay, so we're just going to toss this in.
Throw them right in here.
Yeah, one thing I like about these zucchinis, these tromboncino squash, when you use them young like this, and also when you're baking with them as the mature squash, as you can see there's no seeds in that stem. All the seeds are down in that bulb end.
I'm assuming we get a little bit of salt?
Absolutely, salt.
A little bit of pepper?
A little bit of pepper. And I'm just going to reach around here when that goes in and set our timer.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Here we go.
And we're going to let those go about 15 minutes. Okay.
All right.
Now, while that's going, we are going to start with our quinoa. So let me go ahead and dump that in.
All right.
And with that, I'm going to also grab some different herbs. Quinoa, in and of itself, has a rather bland flavor to it. And that's what makes it a good base for things like stuffing.
Right.
Gluten-free stuffing.
Right.
So just to season it, you know, you can use chicken broth.
Right.
If you're doing gluten-free cooking, you want to watch your labels
gluten, right.
because oftentimes there will be gluten in your
to
store-bought.
help thicken it up, right.
Right.
So
I'm
it's
adding,
always best to make your own stock.
right.
Then you know what's in it.
Yep. So I'm adding a sprig of rosemary. I've done that. A little piece of sage, and then also a sprig of thyme. And that's just going to add a little extra
all of those
flavor.
from your garden. It's
all
still,
from my garden.
Even though it's November, we're still getting things from the garden.
That's right.
I wanted to take a minute and talk about quinoa. This is red quinoa. I like to use this at Christmas. I do a tabloui. Frank Dahlhair may be on the show doing tabloui with me in the future. But quinoa is a grain. It's grown down in Peru and Central America. They call it the most ancient of grains. It has high amino acids, so it's really good for you.
Yeah.
Now it's spelled with a Q, Q-U-I-N-O-A. Quinoa is how it's pronounced. It is, on the top of this particular one, it is wheat-free and gluten-free, and we want to look for that. We also talked about this particular brand is organic, and it is, we talked about sometimes when you're buying quinoa, it can be bitter. You want to talk about that a minute?
Right. With quinoa, a lot of times when people are introduced for it the first time, they're turned off by a bitter taste. And that's primarily because some quinoa that you get isn't pre-washed. Quinoa has a natural substance on its seed coat called saponin, and it's bitter, but it's easily washed off. And so if you've got a real fine mesh strainer, like this one right here, you can just wash your quinoa. Most of the quinoa now comes pre-washed.
Pre-washed.
Yeah.
Now, this particular one, I was down in Lexington, and they had the International Chefs Competition sponsored by Alltech and Lyons Farm. And so all these chefs came in from all over the world for this competition, paired with local chefs. Chef Hervé, I hope I got that right, came from Peru, and he was so excited about cooking with quinoa. Quinoa is native there. The Mayans used it, the Aztecs, and he sat and he was trying to tell us how that it grows, and it grows on a seed head. And if you remember last episode, we did sorghum, and that's how he tried to explain it to me. He says, you know sorghum, you know sorghum, and so it grows, quinoa grows similar to this. It's one of the last of the purest grains, and it's really exciting to be able to use it. I laugh because Peru is a mountainous country, and
That's true.
even though Peru and Pikeville, Kentucky are far apart, mountain people seem to have a similar culture no matter where you are. What are we going to do next, Kathy?
Well, while everything's cooking, that's one thing I like about this. It's just you prep things a little ahead of time, but it goes really quickly. While that's cooking, we're going to chop up some onions and some parsley and tear some mint, and those we'll be adding to our stuffing in a moment.
I pulled these onions this morning, y'all. These are out of my garden.
Great.
Still fresh, still rolling.
Now we're going to go for about a cup of onion.
We'll
That's
take
another
it.
thing I like about this one.
Yeah,
this is one of those
just
recipes.
throw it
It's
in
not precise by any means.
Now we're going to, let me get a bowl.
Yeah.
There it is. And we're also going to do some mint in this, right?
That's correct.
And how much mint are we going to need?
About a cup.
Alrighty.
Yeah. So if you wanted to go ahead and start shredding
I
mint.
got the mint right here.
Okay. And I'll just let you set these to the side somewhere. And I'm sure you'll want to save these because you know you can replant those.
We are all about reusing and recycling. So fresh onion roots, just plot them again. Now mint is a sign of hospitality. And I'm tickled to have Miss Cathy here today.
Hey, I appreciate you having me.
Anytime that you're dealing with mint, you just strip it off. This is right out of I grow this in my front door step. So, I mean, this grows and grows and grows. I love it in May when it's time for mint juleps, but it's fun to have it right now too. And it's real tender. It smells great. And it will grow. All you need is just one little bit and it will take over your whole garden. Anytime you're working with mint to be cooking, we always tear it rather than cut. If you tear mint, it won't bruise and get black and unsightly. And then we just keep pulling it off of the...
I'm going to reach around you and grab that parsley then.
Alrighty. Parsley is a really interesting herb. Now you have a flat leaf. You're going Italian today. I said Peru and you're Italian flat leaf.
I can't help it. I love Italian heirlooms. And parsley's great too, you know, especially this time of year when things are getting colder. A lot of your herbs are sensitive to cold temperatures, but parsley is one of those that's pretty cold tolerant. It can take many hard frosts and be okay, and it will even overwinter without you offering any type of protection to it as well.
The Italian, or the International Chef's Cook-Off in Lexington, the second night I went and saw Chef Peter, and he was from the Czech Republic, and they love parsley, the Czech Republic. But he had Jeremy Ashby scrambling all over because in addition to wanting the parsley leaves, he cooked with the parsley roots, which was interesting. I've never done that before, but it was very good.
Now there's a special type of parsley for that, is there?
There is, and it's not easy to find, but I got seeds for it. So next season, y'all, you'll be seeing that.
Great.
All right, we're good.
Okay.
So we've got the green onions.
Yeah, and you know what, actually I'm just going to let those sit right there and make things a little bit easier to toss everything together.
All right.
And so now it's just a matter of a weight game.
Looks like our quinoa is about ready to roll. I'm going to add some persimmons.
That's right. These are persimmons that I picked near our home. that I dehydrated.
Octavia Hatcher's watching over you as you get out under the persimmon tree.
That's right. And if you don't have persimmons, you can also just use dried apricots as well. That will be just fine.
Persimmons is local. I mean, that's as local as you could get.
And what I'm doing here is I'm going to, the quinoa needs to rest for about 5 minutes so it will fluff up real nicely.
Are we turning that off?
Yeah,
then?
we're going to turn that off. Okay. Thank you. And
it just kind of cooks a lot like rice, so you know you kind of want that fluff.
Right. So the persimmons now will get a little rehydrated, kind of infuse the quinoa with that
little bit of sweetness. Yep. Now you know we always do things big on Friends Drift In. Don't tell me we can't grow in the garden in November.
That's right. Here it is a week before Thanksgiving, and these are all different types of veggies that I've got growing in my garden right now.
What you got here?
This is a Japanese giant red mustard, and this is a great cool season vegetable. Frost will hit it, it'll wilt down, but as soon as the sun comes out, it springs right back up. Right.
I'm guessing. Oh! I didn't know what you had down in the bottom of that. Now, Kathy, this is not an Appalachian thing.
No, it's not, but it could be if somebody's grandparents had brought this here years ago.
From Italy.
From
Did
Italy.
I say this was a Peruvian chef?
This is kohlrabi, and it's kind of like an above-ground turnip.
Right.
And so I've got two different varieties here. And what you would do is you would take the leaves. You can eat the leaves, but the real gem is this part, this bulb here that sits up above the ground. And the way I like to do this is to cut it in slices and put it in my cast iron skillet on high heat with some olive oil, and then just cook it to just tender, and then add a little fresh Parmesan Reggiano.
Oh, a little bit of cheese on it. Now,
yes.
When we talk about cast iron skillets, you know, most of us around here would have a seasoned skillet. But now, if you were diagnosed with celiac, you would want to get a brand new skillet.
That's correct. I've read that pretty much sandblasting will get the gluten out of there. That wasn't an option for us, so when my family got their diagnosis, we actually had to give away all of our cast iron cookware and start all over.
What we got here, Kathy?
Some bok choy, some Chinese cabbage. And
did I say this was supposed to be a Peruvian chef?
Hey, you know, we're multicultural here. It's a melting pot. But I've recently discovered Asian greens. We make a lot of stir fry, especially with venison.
This
is
venison, that would be
wonderful
so good
for stir fries.
Just like you were doing. This is Swiss chard. This looks like bright light Swiss chard. On the very first show, we talked about Swiss chard. And Swiss chard or pot choy, both you just kind of braise down the greens. And just a little bit of olive oil in a pan, like you said, and just kind of, and I throw in a couple of pepper flakes with them. How do you do it?
Yes, I like to add pepper flakes sometimes, but my daughters are kind of iffy about that, so more commonly just garlic and nutmeg.
You ought to give your daughters a shout out.
Oh, yes.
Carolyn and Vivian.
That's right.
And how old are they?
They're 4 and 2.
They have the most beautiful blonde hair, you all. And when they're out in the garden chasing their ducks, Bingo and...
Bingo, Sarsaparilla, Nini Quack Quack, Mr. E. We've got a nice little battling of backyard ducks for them to play with.
How big is your garden?
My garden's only 40 by 60 feet, and that's actually on the high end.
And how much did you pull out of it this year?
Well, you know, this year we were busy and we didn't weigh, but one year we did, and we weighed just during summer. And we weighed just shy of a ton. I wasn't counting
of food
what
on
we ate
40 by
in the
60.
garden. Yeah.
What we got here?
This is a rapini. So you can eat these nice little bulbs or little blooms.
Oh, that
you
would
want to
be
eat
pretty
them
in a salad.
Oh, they're great. And we got turned on to this in Italy, in a restaurant, cooked in olive oil, and it's just great.
Now, I know I'm short and I'm not finding them. You told me there was beets in here.
You've got beets. You got some beets. Sorry, I didn't bother taking off that root.
Am I good? This is a beet. We know beets on Johns Creek and in Pike County in eastern Kentucky.
That's right.
How do you fix your beets?
I like to roast my beets.
And how do you do that?
Well, essentially, you know, you don't have to do anything other than to, you know, cut that big long taproot off and quarter them. I like to add a little olive oil, roast them in the oven on high heat, and when they come out of the oven, that's when I take the skin off. You don't have to do that ahead of time. You can just peel that skin
It
right
just
off there.
slips.
Yes, and they're delicious on salads with goat cheese.
Oh, yes, ma'am. And I like it drizzled, sometimes with a little balsamic vinegar. You would be surprised. And you can eat the tops of beets.
Yes, you can.
As a salad or char them down like we do the rest of the greens.
Right.
So is there anything, did I miss? Is this
Just some little carrots.
Ah,
Yeah.
she's got, all kinds of carrots.
So I have grown some purple carrots and yellow carrots in the past, and I really like the orange and the white. Carrots in winter are far sweeter than carrots in summer. I don't grow carrots in the summer. They have a little bitter taste. Something happens in winter with the chemistry that goes on in the plant that makes them super sweet. Elliot Coleman, who is my garden guru about four season gardening,
one
he
of the
calls
best
them
books. Pikeville Library has that on their
Great.
shelves. Yes.
Well, he calls them candy carrots. So a lot of veggies, you know, they have their prime season. Like you wouldn't buy a tomato in winter. Same thing with carrots. You don't grow carrots in the summer. They're best grown in fall and winter.
So don't tell us that you can't be growing 4 seasons, because Cathy Raymar does it all the time.
That's right.
And we are blessed in Appalachia that we can still do these things all by ourselves.
That's right. Okay, so it's been 5 minutes for the quinoa to rest. And so I'm just going to take and fluff this up.
And you can tell when the quinoa is done, and you get a tight shot, it gets like a white ring around the edges, almost like fish eyes. That's what I think it looks like.
Good analogy.
Oh, it smells good, Cathy.
Okay, so now we're going to also get the squash out of the oven. And these have been in there for about 15 minutes.
I want to put them in?
Yeah, we can do that. Just to get this hot stuff out of our way. And really, when you're doing the squash, we may have let these go a little bit longer than what they should have. I don't know, they're looking all right.
I kind of like them with a little bit of little brownness on them.
Right, kind of caramelized,
yeah.
sugars in it.
Uh-huh.
But you want to make sure that you don't do them too long, because you know, with this, you want to have that texture, that crunchy squash. And so now I'm going to get our butternut out.
Now this was the Italian squash. I'm going to pronounce that for me one more time.
Butternut.
Butternut.
Rugosa, violina, Joya.
Joya. I like Joya. Tilt the other way so they can see it.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Maybe I should have had you do this.
No, here, I got it. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good. And I'm going to get this.
Oh, that looks so good, Cathy. Now I'm throwing it all over, but we always say barn rules at Friends Drift In, because we're just among friends, isn't that right?
That's right. That's right.
So there is the butternut squash.
Right, and now I'm just going to take our
Ladle
quinoa.
this in. Oh, Cathy. Look at those persimmons.
Mm-hmm.
Smells earthy.
Yes.
And very wholesome. I'm going to say wholesome.
And
but it's also going to be
cranberries.
sweet. Oh, a little bit
Can't
of
be
dried
Thanksgiving without cranberries, right?
No.
Okay. And then all those nice herbs that
Right, and we
chopped
have
up.
mint and flat leaf parsley, Italian parsley, and some green.
Oops.
It's real life. And some green onions.
Uh-huh.
And we're just going to kind of toss it in.
Yep. Just
And
stir
what are we
everything
going to do
together.
with the lemon?
Now we're going to take the lemon with our grater.
Where'd it go? Where's zest? That's what you threw on the floor.
That's what let me rinse that off real quick. And while you stir that up, I'm just going to carefully put some lemon zest.
Now, when we talk about lemons, when we're doing, I'm picky about my lemons, and I know you are too.
Yes.
If I'm just going to do juice and I'm not going to use the skin, I will cut some corners and buy conventional lemons.
Right.
But if I'm going to zest and use that skin, I want organic, because I don't want any pesticides on there for my children, my family. I don't want any pesticides for my belly either. Look how pretty.
It's gorgeous.
Look how pretty.
Okay, now
I'll see. right here, I'm hoping y'all can get this shot, how this has got this white ring around it. Can you get in that tight? And that's how you know that the quinoa is done, when it gets that little white ring around it. And I like to use the red quinoa sometimes too. You can really see that. Oh, Kathy, this smells so good.
Okay, now we're just going to put a little lemon juice on it.
Lemon juice on it, give it a little bit of acid. Stir that in the top. And this is a really fresh and different dressing from a bread dressing, but so
good.
Good and colorful.
And it's great as leftovers too. You might have to add just a little extra lemon to it when you reheat it, just to give it that, you know, extra brightness to it.
If you're doing it for leftovers.
Right, but
now, let's take a bite of this. I'm dying. You got some of that butternut squash in there. Get a bite. All the herbs.
Good. Excuse me.
All the herbs. Y'all, this is fresh.
It's all local, pretty much.
All
except for the olive oil.
Out of our garden.
And the quinoa, we got to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, well, maybe we can hit up Chef Hervé. So, we've got one more segment to do where we're going to talk about some gluten-free entertaining just for the holidays. Just because you're going gluten-free doesn't mean you can't have an abundant Thanksgiving.
That's right.
On my blog, Friends Drift In, the recipe for a flourless cake. You heard me right, flourless. The trick is this has sorghum to make it moist and some eggs. And what gives it the texture is just some gluten-free cocoa powder. Now, Kathy, you're a beekeeper.
That's right.
That keeps that garden rolling.
That's
and you
right.
know, it's the holidays and we like to share. And so we're going to put some honey on top of this because it wasn't decadent enough, you know. A little bit of that honey, yum. Oh. We've talked about the Peruvian influence today with quinoa. We talked about the Aztecs. For this particular one, I used Green and Black's organic. It's called Mayan Gold. Maybe we'll see the future.
Oh boy.
So we're going to try this flourless cake. And tell me what we've got over here, because this is not wheat.
No, these are some homemade gluten-free breads. Like you say, you don't have to sacrifice. If you didn't want to do this type of stuffing and try your own, you know, your mother's stuffing, make your own gluten-free bread. You can get all the ingredients in Pikeville. You can go to my blog, www.motherofahubbard.com, and I've got the recipes for these on there.
All right, let's try this.
Okay. That is good.
That's ridiculous. Kathy and I love to do heirloom gardening. This is a blue Hubbard.
That's right.
Which kind of the inspiration for your blog.
That's right.
Mother of a Hubbard.
That's right.
And we've cooked with all these fabulous winter squash today. We hope that you will do some four-season gardenings. And as we close out, we're doing a little bit of hot chocolate.
Oh, but first, I need to give you a little memento.
No, no, no.
Yes. No, trust me. You need this. Open it up. Of our memory of our first TV shoot together. Go ahead. Have a sniff.
Smell the lemon. Smell the melons. So here we go. Share the giggles.
Share the
Kathy
giggles.
Ray Meyer on Friends Drift In.